It's the Mind State Marketing Hour. We're live and we're running fast. It's Will Leach. He's our favorite scientist. He's blinded us with science. What kind of science? Behavioral science. Will, how are you, brother?
Doing pretty good. Tonight is the first night of football, buddy. So I've drafted my fantasy team last night. I feel pretty good about what I drafted, to be honest with you. I got a couple of sleepers, but I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm at. We start tonight, and it's a challenge every season, but I think I got this one in the bag based upon my draft.
Well, what a great segue. Got something in the bag. It's the Mind State Marketing Hour with Will Leach. And our nice little intro with the music. How to make behavioral insights more actionable for your brand. So, Will, there's a backstory here.
Yeah,
what's going on? What's the backstory on Actionable? It's like,
well, in the insights field, if you're in the marketing research field, we have been talking ever since I entered it probably 20 years ago about, being, giving actionable insights and being thought leaders and strategic and all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of researchers struggle, especially in corporate America, of taking those insights and actually making sure that their, vendor, whoever they're, whoever they're supporting can use them. So the reason why this came up recently is I think sometimes we take it for granted that insights are very easy to apply. You just hand off those recommendations and off your brand manager goes, off your agency goes. But I was talking to a company, they're one of my clients who did a big workshop with me for their entire marketing organization. And then they bought training on top of it, right, Steve? So I was like, all right, they really bought into Mind State Marketing. But then, after the training, after the workshops, they kind of just go away. And you're like, okay, I hope they're doing something. I hope they're doing something. And all of a sudden, I got an email that said, can you put together 3 slides for me really quickly, just because we need to talk to our sales team, which was like, oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. Because if they're taking their training and talking to their sales team, which is not really traditional, I think a user of insights, I was like, they're applying it. And they just figured it out on their own. But it dawned on me, a lot of times I don't get those emails, right, Steve? It's kind of like when, you do great work for people and you hope they use it but you don't always get that feedback. So I thought, you know what, let me take a couple of minutes, tell you some things I did back when I was on the client side, to helpfully make your behavioral insights more actionable so you get the credit that you deserve when you do these big pieces of research.
lots of research, lots of backstory. I was working on an account this past week, and it really struck me several years into this account how much we've invested in so many things. I have a team that hops on these, and I mean, lots of pages, lots of downloads, follow-up emails, lots of discussions. There's all these moving parts that have been established, and you want, you're building a system that's going to help them grow their business, but you wonder, is it real apparent, all this back work that we've done?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like watching your child grow, right? I don't
Mhm.
realize how he's growing. My son's growing on every given day, but it's until somebody sees him, haven't seen him for a while. It's like, wow, you've come such a long way. That's why it's funny. I have an employee who writes me every January 1st. There's no lie. He writes at the very top. Usually the subject is why Will is so good. And he goes, Will, I'm just going to remind you all the stuff you did this year. Cause you don't really, when you're in the weeds, you don't get it, man. You do not see it all. And so he writes me this email just to remind me. And then I also have Kristen, who works on the podcast quite a bit. And she's always one to remind me of how far we've come just in the last 3 years. So yes, absolutely true. You don't see it yourself. And you don't always know the impact you're having, but you should still take, care of trying to make sure your clients get the biggest impact they can. And you can actually, push things in your direction if you follow few little things,
All right, LinkedIn world, be sure to let us know your questions, but this is excellent. Understand what you're really getting with behavioral insights. I think this is really important because there's a lot of things taken for granted, but these are extremely powerful.
They are. I think that, some of the questions I get even today are kind of what are behavioral insights? What is behavioral science? And we get those questions quite a bit. So first off, let me just, for those of you who are new to the show and you may be thinking, what does he mean by behavioral insights? Many people define behavioral insights around data analytics, right? Oh, I am able to track a behavior. When somebody comes in through my funnel, I can track that behavior. Therefore, I'm getting insights. At touch point number 4, a lot of people, I lose 20% of my customers. So the insight is, touch point number 4 is not working. Those are behavioral insights. I totally get it. I'm talking about something slightly different, guys, especially if you're on a brand manager out there, a product developer out there, or you're working for a big client, big brand. What I mean by behavioral insights is understanding the true whys behind those behaviors. So you think about behavioral psychology, sociology, biology, sometimes neuroscience. These help us understand these insights. And what I meant by understand what you're really getting with these behavioral insights, I think sometimes we think, oh, behavioral insights, deeper, richer, more important insights. Yes, totally agree with that. I think that by understanding the psychology of somebody, by understanding how our environments influence our decisions and our belief systems and our values, all the stuff we talk about every week on here, that's important. But what really you're getting, guys, it's the application side. Behavioral insights are uniquely different from other insights because so much of this work that started in academia, they've created models, they've created ways of showing you how to apply those insights into activations, into innovations, into your customer service, etc. So it's deep understanding plus activation, actually using it. And so if you know that's what you're getting, if you understand what you're really getting, an interesting thing happened with this AMN, my client, the healthcare client, right, Steve? So I taught their marketing team about mind state marketing. We talked about identifying the mind state. So we went through some activities and actually did research for them to identify their mind state. So they got great insights. Then they also got these blueprints that I offer. And the training. So they're going to be able to use those and apply those insights. But what was interesting about what they did is they realized, like I said before, that there were many touch points that go outside of marketing. There's sales, there's customer service, it's the innovations in the products and services you sell. It is your social media, it's your PR, it's your strategy. If you're going to study human behavior, then you know that every human touch point can be influenced by this insight. They didn't think of the world of just like, I'm only talking about marketing. I'm only thinking about marketing. They understood that it's every touch point. They can use those same insights. So they're distributing those insights to lots of different people in their organization, which it makes it much more actionable. And I'm going to walk you guys through a similar story that I did back at PepsiCo years ago. I talk about it in my book, but it's one of my favorite stories of making sure that your insights are applied correctly. But it's realizing that human insights allow you to take that same idea and influence lots of people in the organization. That's really important to understand, that when you're doing a piece of research, that you should be seeding it to lots of different groups, even finance, even HR. Anybody that touches humans should be getting these insights.
So you're talking about making a cultural impact in that organization. You're changing. You're making the culture. There's a deliberate insertion of insights, which is way more impactful in the long term than just your message.
But imagine, you work with these corporations too, right, Steve? Like they think of their world as, well, this is my role. This is my assignment. So I'm working with a company right now who is in the paper industry. And what was interesting about it's an innovation team. So they had a designer, a product developer, a researcher, nobody really from the brand side too much. It was really a product development team. And we were going through, they're telling us all the stuff that they learned, and they've been working on this problem for 20 years, literally for 20 years. And they were just telling, we haven't even started the research yet. But as we were talking, I said, actually, I think it's it's less of an innovation problem. It's this idea is also, or the solution may be more of a marketing issue, or actually even a PR issue. And so it was that idea of saying, oh, wow, since we're going to provide human insights, it's not just, even though you think of yourselves as an innovation team, you're really not. You're supposed to grow business. That's what you're supposed to do. And so I think the way you said, that cultural change is making you understand that your role is not just to influence your team, but it's to take those insights and influence other teams. And this team got it. They're great. They're like, you're right. We could never innovate our way out of that, but we could message our way out of that issue. I'm like, yep, that's why we should bring in those people, even if they're not paying for it. Bring them in. It may make it more complex. I totally get it. I've been on that team, those things. But if you're going to really get the most out of your behavioral insights, make sure everybody knows these insights are coming, and so they can apply it to their job.
Yeah, I love that. That's, I always think about when we're working on a message, it's not just the marketing message, but think of a person that answers the phone that's not considered in marketing. If they are clued into that, then immediately the first touch is influenced by that. But if they're siloed, oblivious to, I think they're working on marketing in there or something.
Yeah,
Right?
totally.
You're totally going against your intent.
Oh, yeah. And even some insights people out there, and they would never admit this, but there are still people out there in the insights world, marketing research world, who believe that since they own the data, that gives them power. So they don't want to give that data away. They want to be known. They need to be asked to come into the meeting. They need to be, they need to be the people who guard that data. And it happens all the time. We have do-it-yourself platforms out there. And a lot of times the researchers don't. The whole idea with do-it-yourself research platforms are to allow anybody to do a piece of research, basically. But what they do is they hoard that. They're like, I don't want anybody else, because then if you could take my power, but they don't realize that if they let their brand managers do some of the research, it would take the load off of their plate so they could do something more important. But they don't do that. So there's still this hoarding of data, there's hoarding of budgets or hoarding of resources in corporations. If we just thought of ourselves as ultimately our job is to grow our businesses and just give it all away, give it out. You'll have much more effective insights that will actually change, the business trajectory.
Okay, so we know we should do that.
Yep.
But how?
That's right. I do this all the time. I tell people that you could read all these books behind me, Steve. You've read a whole bunch of them too, right? I've got Made to Stink. I've got Blink. I have the 7 Basic Plots. I have all these books. And what those books will do to you, you'll read a book and they'll tell you a case study, they'll tell you a story, and they'll take that idea, most books, and then you'll go and try to take that same idea, apply it to your business, and it fails. And so then you go, this behavioral science stuff doesn't work. It's not because the idea itself doesn't work. It's that you're not following a proven model. Very few books have models, real application models. There's a couple of them, like if you know BJ Fogg. So BJ Fogg is a guy out of Stanford University, brilliant. He's the one that actually inspired me to leave corporate America, in fact, to go start my company. He has something called the Fogg behavioral change model, the Fogg behavioral model. And it's a very simple model. You can read about it in his book, Habits. You can look them up, but it's a very simple model to basically create habits called tiny habits, So he has a model that you follow. You also have Nir Eyal. He has a model it's called Hooked. He has a Hooked model that's about trying to gain kind of habits on apps mostly. So he has a Hooked model, which is a trigger that creates an action that creates a reward. So there's a couple of models out there. I have my model, right, where we're going to activate somebody's goal in messaging. We're going to prime their motivation. We're going to frame up, the way they should approach, and then we're going to make a shortcut trigger. The reason why, I don't even care what model you use. I hope you use mine, but I don't really care. The reason why models work, and that they're so important if you're going to make, your insights work for you, and you're going to get, the most actionability, is if you have a model and then you take whatever the idea is that you have, you've done some research, you come up with a recommendation, you can now take that recommendation, run it through the lens of a model, and then put it out to market. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. And if something fails, if it doesn't work, if you have a model, you can go back and look at it through the lens of the model, go, where in the model do we think we failed? Great example. If you're going to do Nir Eyal, he has his Hooked model. So he has this idea that you create a trigger, which then creates a response of some kind, and then you get rewarded. So let's say if you're developing an app and you want to create stickiness on your app, you want people to go to your app every day. Well, what you have to do is you have to have a trigger of some kind. So imagine a notification pop up on your phone, right? A notification triggers you to open up that app, Facebook, whatever app it is. You can look at that. There is an action of some kind. I opened it up, I scrolled or whatever, and then there's a variable reward, which means, hey, Steve just liked my photo, right? And his idea is you build that into the development of your app, and you can create this loop, and then it gets a great reward, and then you will, kind of be hooked on it. If you get your app out there, and if your app is failing in market, then if you have a model, you can't just, you put your app, like, people don't like my app sucks, let me just pull it off market. If you have a model to go back to, you can say, okay, let me look at it. Do I have the right trigger? Is there a trigger that's actually happening? So maybe it's a notification, maybe it's a ping, maybe it's something that's integrated with your watch. I don't know what it is, but look at it through that lens. Say, first, you have a trigger, and you can evaluate your triggers. Remove everything else, because if there is no trigger, Steve, nobody's ever going to go to the app. You'll forget the app. It's on slide 7 or 8 of your, of your phone or whatever. So if you have a model, then you go, okay, my trigger's fine. Let's take a look at, what's the action? Is the action too hard? Is there friction? Or vice versa, or you keep going. If you feel good about that, but there's no reward, there's no there's no up level, there's no coins that you're getting, whatever. So the idea here is, if you don't have a proven model to apply, you'll never know if it's the entire idea that's failing or if it's a part of that idea. That's why I hate nudging. Have you heard of the term nudging? Nudges, right? Right. So if you're in the world out there, behavioral science, I may say this may be a bit controversial, but if you look at the research right now, I'm not out of line of saying this. Nudging is a joke. It's a joke. It's not working in the real world. And I used to teach all these books back here that talk about these nudges, of how do you create an environment, or how do you create, an app or whatever that will nudge somebody to take on a behavior. And I used to talk about these things and teach all about these nudges. And the fact of the matter is that more and more people that are doing these nudges are finding out they don't work in the real world. They work in academia, but they haven't been replicated. There's a really big problem, in fact, in behavioral sciences space with all these studies that we used to talk about 5-10 years ago to get more, kind of credibility. A lot of these studies are showing that they can't be replicated, meaning that if you can't replicate a study, then it was chance that you got. Or in fact, a lot of people, in this world, Steve, they fudge the data. They've lived to get published. Professors and academics out there have actually made up data, so they created a nudge, and therefore they got a great paper out there. They wrote a book. They become a best-selling author. Nudges are a joke. Why? Because most nudges are not applied at all. It's an idea that you put out in the market. So there's not like an application model. It's not like the Nir Eyal's model. It's not like my model. There are 4 steps, and you can evaluate things on 4 steps. Most nudges out there are just everybody gets in a room and brainstorms, come up with a couple of ideas. And then what they tell you is like, well, now that we've done this, and if it doesn't work, let's try something again. Let's try something else. Let's try something else. And they feel as if that's the model. It's like you have to do trial and error, trial and error. There are not many industries out there, Steve, I think, that you could get away with that by just saying, well, we failed, let's try it again. Well, we failed that one, let's try something again. Like, very few industries would ever allow you to do that. But behavioral sciences are allowed to say that because they say, well, the people are very complex. The human brain is very complex. That's ridiculous. If you don't have an application model, whether it's BJ Fogg, whether it's Nir, whether it's mine, whether it's Duhigg, there's all these authors out there that have actual application models. If you are not living by an application model, then I don't think you're ever going to get that kind of, the actionability from your marketing that you really need. Because if it fails, you have to blame the entire system. And if you blame the entire system, all that work goes to nothing.
Winging it. That's what we call it on the street.
Right. There's no reason to wing it, man. My whole job right out here, right, is to tell you the science behind marketing. You should not have to wing your marketing. You shouldn't have to wing it anymore. Anyways.
Well, insight, actionability.
Yeah.
Defined, small, yet painful.
Painful. That's right. So I tried to figure out a function sign, and I couldn't figure it out. So I've said insight, actionability equals defined, small, and painful. What I wanted to say, but I couldn't figure out how to do it, was like, insight's actionability is a function of that behavior is very, very defined. That problem is defined, it's small, and it's painful to the organization. So I'll give you an example that I talk about a little bit in my book. So it was like my second year of doing these experiments at PepsiCo. And I write about this in my book. And there's this concept that I did, which was trying to help the sales organization, which is weird because I was reporting into marketing, but the sales organization had heard about me. And this experiment that I did, it's a much smaller experiment that I did, but it drove some sales in convenience stores. And it was really cheap, really inexpensive. It was about $70, and it drove some really big sales in a convenience store. So word got out. So there was this project. I'll just call it these barrel coolers. So what happened was PepsiCo invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions, is my guess. I never got the number. But what they did was they invested in buying barrel coolers. So imagine a cooler that stands it's got a refrigeration unit at the bottom of this cooler, and it looks like a barrel, like a rodeo barrel. You know that, Steve, right? You're from Texas. You're a Texas boy.
Yeah, I'm a clown.
Yeah. That's right. So like a clown barrel. That's right. So what they did was they bought these, and what they wanted to do is take these coolers and give them to their best clients out there in convenience stores. And the idea for these barrel coolers was that they could move these coolers around. So a convenience store could kind of plug it in overnight, get it really, really cold. You drop ice in it, and then there's a refrigeration unit that was at the bottom of the cooler and keep the ice cold. And you could put drinks in there and put, some chips around there. So imagine these things are pretty expensive. Imagine if you did 10,000 of these and each of them costs $1,000. I don't know. I mean, you're looking at significant money. Maybe there's 20,000, maybe there's 40,000 out there. So the point of the matter was they were not getting the sales lift. So they spent all this money, they invested in this new technology, and basically nothing was coming out of it. Like no new sales growth. So without a model, you would go, these barrel coolers just don't work. We wasted all this money. Let's just get them back, and maybe we can sell them, or maybe just give them away to these C stores and just as a thank you. Well, this one sales guy came to me and he said, what could you do? Like, could you take a look at these and just tell us maybe it's not the innovation is not broken. It's not the coolers are broken. Maybe it's the messaging around the cooler. Maybe we don't have the right marketing. And they could not get any feedback from the marketing group. Like sales and marketing, Steve, there's kind of like this weird tension a lot of times.
It's weird.
They don't like to talk to each other. They don't
and
respect
dogs.
each other.
Yeah.
Yes, there's something weird.
I have to look around when I go out on the street to make sure there's no salespeople.
I know sales guys are always like looking over the fence at you. That's right. So here's what I did. So but the point being, this idea is that they came to me and said, will you work on this? And I said, all right, in my head, I'm just trying to create this new group at PepsiCo using behavioral sciences. And there's a lot of risk on me, right? Because if this is my new thing and it fails, then Will's kind of a dummy, and let's make him work at Coca-Cola. You don't want to work at Coca-Cola. There's a bunch of dummies over there. Just playing. I love you guys at Coke. So what I did was I looked at it through this lens and said, first, how big of a deal is this? And actually, even though a couple $100,000 is significant money, not at a company like PepsiCo. It's not. It's small. So small projects sometimes are great because if there's not a lot of weight, if there's not a lot of executives talking about it, if there's not a lot of senior executives looking at the impact of that, then there's more there's room for experimentation. There's more like license to have fun with it. So the first thing was it was small. Second thing was, it was small. Second thing, it was defined. It was a very simple thing I had to do. What it was, can I get more people to buy sodas from these coolers? That was it. I had another project, which I stopped working on because it was like, we want to cure, I'm not kidding you. We want to cure obesity with chips. Like Frito-Lay wanted to stop people eating chips just so we could have our big impact on obesity. I don't know if they would have said it like that, but they were really trying hard. And I was like, that is a very difficult problem. That is not defined at all. Right. And so it went away. But I remember thinking to myself, this is so, for your behavioral science research, this is not going to be actionable at all. We're not going to create a new human diet. But that was in the brief. And the third thing was, is it painful? Meaning it's got to be defined. It has to be small, but that person who's responsible for it, they have to feel pain, Steve. This guy was nervous because he was a junior salesperson. He had, sold in this initiative, and he was being asked, at least by his manager, what's going on with these barrel coolers? What's being on? Not the senior execs. They don't even know that stuff's happening, but it was at his management level. So he was getting pressure. He was feeling the heat. And what I would tell you is that if you can find something that is very defined, it's relatively small, but there's somebody who's getting a lot of heat, like for that, those are three great things. That's who you want on your team to push an insight forward, to make a research report actionable. So getting those things aligned, trying to find those, or making sure that you have that characteristic will do a great service, for you to get something that's going to kind of get pushed through the organization, because there's a lot of meat in the game, I guess, at that point.
So I'm dying. What's the outcome? What was the message?
Oh,
And
yeah.
what was the outcome?
Yeah. So here's what we did. We did a little bit of research, and we found out that we had to change up the messaging. So before, the barrel cooler looked like a can of Pepsi, blue can of Pepsi. And then at the very top, they had like what's called a header card, but they had a piece of, they had the kind of a card above it. And it said something to the point of buy together for $2.22. So it was a bundling opportunity. It's like buy a bag of chips, buy a soda, buy both together for $2.22, which, by the way, was a pretty good deal. It was a solid deal. What I did was I looked at some research done out of Yale University, and it talked about this idea of hedonic bundling. And basically what happens is, rather than taking two items and saying buy both together for one low price, do this. Say buy both together, save X% on one of those items. X%. So in this case, it was a 70-cent discount. I did not give any more discount. I just said, rather than saying buy both together for $2.22, I said, basically, buy both together, save 70 cents on the soda. So it's this idea called hedonic bundling. The idea is that if we feel a little bit guilty in any way, you can give a monetary discount, buy both these things together for 70 cents, but I can actually make you feel better about the thing you didn't want to buy, which was, in this case, soda, because I gave you 70 cents off. So I took that discount on one of those items. I did a couple of things with colors. I did a couple of things with some priming, and we actually increased sales of these bundles by double digits. So very, very successful. I did nothing different I didn't hire new actors. I didn't do a new photo shoot. All I did was reframe some of the words, use some different words. So, but I don't think I would even have the chance to do it if this sales guy was like, yes, if you can help me out, Will, do it, please. I'll do it. Because he was like, I'm feeling the heat. It was small. It was only in 10 different C-stores. I did this experiment. It wasn't a nationwide delivery, and it was very defined. I need to sell more chips and more sodas off this unit. Very, very defined. And that's why it came through. And that's the thing that won me that award back there. There's an award back there for Research of the Year. And I think it was because it was small. There's a little bit of heat on the sales guy that would do it, not the marketer, by the way. The sales guy, I'll never forget that. He funded my research, and very defined, very defined.
Hedonic bundling. Just fun to say that.
It is really fun to say that.
Just think
I say discount sin. We got to discount sin. That's what I used to say. But I feel like that's a little overboard.
Your son's at school. What's your dad do? Something about hedonic bundling. Ooh.
He's a hedonic bundler.
We'll put stuff together. Find allies inside the organization.
Yeah, if you're having problems with getting your research report, into the organization, and kind of adopted, and and kind of having these things more actionable and getting people to do something with it, you need to find different allies. You got to realize, especially in a big company, there are lots of mini agendas. This is for you junior researchers out there. There are many, many, many unwritten agendas inside of a big corporation. Mm-hmm. There is a vice president who has a plan for his group. And that plan, you don't know anything about that plan because he never even talks about that. She never even says that plan, but she's thinking 3 or 4 years out. That's why she's a vice president. She's thinking 3 or 4 years out what she wants to do with the organization. You have presidents of companies, you have directors of companies, and they all have their agendas. And sometimes the work that you're doing just doesn't fit their agenda. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It just doesn't fit their agenda. So if you are finding that your insights reports are hitting walls, and it's not as if people ever say, listen, don't ever do that research. It'll just kind of fade away. Oftentimes what that really means is that it didn't fit into somebody's agenda. So an executive is not pushing that research forward. They're not getting that to get to the actionability stage where it'll go to an agency and you can get these agencies to do better marketing. So that means that you don't have an ally in your organization. That's all that means. You have to find those allies where this fits their agenda. So let's go back to hedonic bundling. So remember, I was doing this project. It was small. I wasn't being told by my director. Yeah, I guess I was a senior director at the time. He wasn't telling me, where are you on this hedonic bundling? It was all kind of below the surface. Nobody really knew about it, right? So what I did, though, is I found a person, her name was Julie. I talk about her in my book. Julie was a contract marketer working for an agency that was doing very small projects inside of PepsiCo, inside of Frito-Lay. But she saw this as a ticket to get her to hopefully become employed at PepsiCo. She wanted to work at PepsiCo, not as a contractor. She wanted to be an employee of Frito-Lay, PepsiCo. So she was an ally because she was like, if I can kind of be a part of this, I can show my impact. I may be able to get hired. Then, of course, that sales guy, relatively junior in the organization, he was absolutely an ally. Why? Because I did the research for him and he was getting a lot of the fire. And so what I did was I went around my normal chain of command. My normal chain of command would have gone through the insights organization to a brand, do my presentation, and then hopefully it gets worked on. In this case, I went to a junior creative who was working from another agency, but she was pushing that creative. She got me that creative for free, as a matter of fact. And then going through the sales organization, I was able to bypass those people that were blocking me. Not that they hated it. It wasn't interesting to them. I got around them. It started making waves inside the sales organization until a vice president of the sales organization called the vice president in the marketing organization and said, what is going on with this research guy? Like, this is great. Can we do more of this stuff? And then my vice president in marketing had no idea what was happening. And so he said nice things, called me to his office, said, what's going on? What did you do for sales? And he wasn't mad. He was actually, he liked it, but I went around them. I had to go around other people's agenda. So you have to figure out other people's agenda, and not even that you have to align with that agenda, but find people that are allies to you, work with them, even if it means you're going around your chain of command. It will make a huge difference.
Excellent. That story is like in the sales process. It's logical. It makes sense. It's going to do a good thing, but they decide against it. It's always like, I don't understand what they didn't see. And what it's not what they didn't see, it's what I didn't see.
Yes.
I didn't see the agenda. I didn't
Yep.
align it or figure out how to support that agenda.
Mhm.
Great point.
Good.
All right. So guess what time it is? Well,
What time is it? What time is it?
it's the time that we get to watch Will dance. Did you go to the dances in high school?
I was hit or miss, to be honest with you. I was probably like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of kid. I was like, I was probably like that, like Stranger Things kind of kid. I'd go every so often, but
Nope.
not really.
So good. This makes him uncomfortable. This has got some pain in it, folks. All you folks that are listening out there, I like to say I'm the smartest guy in marketing. And why? It's because I get to hang out with Will Leach.
Hey.
Okay, he's a scientist, but he doesn't wear the lab coat. He doesn't carry the clipboard. He's in a black t-shirt and he likes to dance. And here's your first dance. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So how do you think AI will change the research landscape?
Yeah, guys, if you're in the research landscape right now, AI is becoming a big, important thing for you. AI meaning artificial intelligence. Guys, here's what AI is going to do for you if you're in the research field. It is, one, going to give you much better insights because it's able to find patterns in data, unstructured or structured data, that otherwise you wouldn't be able to see. Incredibly good at that. Secondly, what it does is AI allows you to make much better recommendations. We should say things like in our recommendations, like, oh, you should consider X, Y, and Z. AI will say, take this word, modify it. Take this visual, modify it. It's much stronger in the recommendations field. Thirdly, it's going to make better solutions. You and I know this, right? AI is at a point where if you're a researcher, very soon you're going to be able to write your own concept statements. Very soon you're going to be able to write your own ad tests if you want to. AI is building, it's happening right now. So it's going to allow you to not just test things, but if it fails, you're going to be able to press a button and artificial intelligence is going to create a better solution for you. And you can go to your brands and your innovation team and say, hey, I used all these insights and here's the solution. Here's the advertisement you need to go forward with. Here is the concept you need to go forward with. That's going to give so much more power and kind of impact for marketing researchers. AI is going to change everything.
It's crazy. I use it some in brainstorming or coming up with inspiration for
Really?
statements or things. And it's amazing how it's like, wow, I didn't think of that particular word, but it is a word I was looking for, but I didn't know I was looking for it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Okay, so you talked previously about mind states.
Yeah.
Now, what are these
All
for?
right, guys. So yeah, we haven't talked about mind states. So
This is where all the cool kids,
yeah,
they're all sitting around talking about mind states right in here.
that's right. You can learn more about it from the book. Market Mindset. Okay, mind states are these moments in time where you have high emotional arousal. You would know it as a hot state. And when you're in a hot state, you're much more susceptible to influence because you're using emotional process. You're using your heart and your intuition to make decisions. That's really important for you to understand, because what you want to do with a mind state is, if I truly want to understand why you do what you do, I can certainly talk to you about your values and your beliefs and your attitudes and your wants and your preferences. Those are all very important. But every day of the week, I choose to do things that are against my best beliefs, that are best, that are contrary to my beliefs, my values, my attitudes. If I have an attitude of I want to eat healthier, but I'm starving, I'll eat a Five Guys burger like that, Steve. You know it. So you must identify mind states. So understanding these moments in time are really, really critical. And there's components of that I won't deal with, but mind states are understanding moments in time that influence you. So you understand the moment in time, you understand the influence, which means you can market much better and design new products and services to meet somebody's mind state in that moment.
Yeah, the way I would answer that is just that if I'm working with a brand, they have a solution that they want to present to folks. If we know the state of mind those people are in when they're considering that solution, then we would modify the messaging to really connect so that they feel, hey, he understands me. He knows that I don't want a messy house after they come fix this. Yep. That makes them feel understood, makes them feel safe. Wham, bam. But if you don't, if you don't do it, I'm going to go back. You're winging it. Mm-hmm. It goes back to the point where you're not using a proven system.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Boom. Okay, so we don't have an hour. We don't want to cry, but we do want to ask this. What is your worst failure in business, and what did you learn?
Oh, God. So, wow, let's go. Okay, so here's what I would say. I think I talked about this last year. It's a small one, but I learned a lot. That was when I pitched for a project with feminine care, with a big feminine care brand. And as we're going into the building, I looked around, I recognized that we had 4 guys going in to pitch research on feminine care. So what I learned was that maybe you should take a moment to think about your representation in the marketplace and think to yourself, maybe we don't have the right team to really change, the fundamental issues that this brand was looking for. So we did not win that project. But that was actually small. Here's what I'll tell you. One thing that I've learned recently, and it's been out you probably have seen this too, Steve, is some of the worst failures in business that I've had have been because I have been working on a partnership of some kind that you find out that really was a big waste of time. Somebody asked me a long time ago, they said, what is the best advice you've gotten as a small business owner? And I said, it was when I first started, this person told me to list out the things that I will not work on. Don't worry about your big ideas. List out the things you don't want to do. Because what happens is people will come to you all the time. I got this new opportunity. If you and I formed a merger, if we did a joint venture, if we did a partnership, we could go service this. And they're all great intentions, right? But what you find out is that if you are talking to another business, that person has their vision, they have their passion, Steve. They're going to work on their stuff. And I think that waiting on people to partnerships and waiting on people and trying to form these things has been some of the worst things I've ever done, because they're slow. Nobody's really fully engaged. And frankly, I've learned that when people say, we have a new idea, we want to do a synergy, or I almost always don't want to do it. And my immediate reaction is not to do it because it almost always fails. I've wasted months and months and months on ideas working with people that nothing ever came about. It was because I just didn't have the discipline to say no.
Well, I'm glad you didn't say no to this partnership. Right. We're talking about, it's the Mind State Marketing Hour. And if you don't have Marketing to Mind States, this book, you're just winging it. You're flailing. It's that one size fits all message that you could be avoiding if you got Marketing the Mind States. Read it, you get the knowledge, then you be like with the cool kids. That's looks like a achievement cautious mind state to me. What about you, Will?
I kind of think it's hedonic bundling. I think we should be thinking more hedonic bundling. You would know if you read my book. You would know what hedonic bundling is and how I did it. So yeah, you can be with the cool kids and talk about hedonics.
By the way, if you want to know if hedonic bundling is a good fit for your project you're working on, Will, you've got a little way for folks to connect with you at your website. Tell us a little bit about it.
That's right. If you go to mindstategroup.com, you're going to find lots of little red buttons throughout that website that will literally go to my calendar, and you can book time on my calendar. And with that, it's a half-hour appointment. We'll just get to know each other. And if you want to run your ads past me, say, Will, there's no cost to this. You want to run an advertisement past me? I will deconstruct that through the lens of behavioral science and give you some pointers. So yeah, just go to mindstategroup.com, book an appointment with me. It's called a free consult. And with those, get to know each other and maybe do some great marketing or marketing research together.
That's right. Get the book with the new look and learn how you can connect with Will and figure out and be able to say hedonic bundling in a sentence with your family at dinner the next time. Okay. Did you know that this is a podcast? It's a legitimate podcast. It's on all the podcast places, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, Amazon Music. And then if you want to watch our faces, you can go to YouTube. It's the Mind State channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, your neighbors, and we'll see you next week. Or is it next week, Will? We got a guest. Let's do a little hook.
We do. We have our guest named Hunter Thurman. He is the CEO of Alpha Diver. And he's going to talk a lot about behavioral science in data. He's a great guy, one of my favorites. And we're going to find out whether we are Marketing Research Podcast of the Year. So I'll let you know on next show. I find out in 2 weeks, buddy. 2 weeks.
We've been working hard, Will. I'm really confident that we will be that. Let's just say you folks show up next week to see. Are you going to get a plaque?
I'm sure I'll get. Yeah, I am actually. I'm going to get. We'll be getting awards. I will show you that award, or we'll both cry for a while before we bring it Hunter.
All right, it's got to have some pain associated with this.
That's right.
Will, be good. We'll talk to you soon. Everyone, thanks for following. Be sure to like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. And
thanks, everybody.
The awkward smile.